So that's what we got to do. If you got trouble with your cones like I did, we'll help you out adjust them. So go ahead and get your iron in the fire and get you a heat. Don't get burned. Well, I did. Make it square. Do the quarter turn. And the reason is, the reason you do it square, if you immediately you start to mess around, it looks real good. You get it down to the point, you're almost ready to start putting your little curl cues and twist or whatever you're going to do on the end of it, you find out it's split. And what it does is you're making that round, you can't see it, but it's twisted internally. It splits the molecules apart inside, and you can't see it to your eye. And then you're starting over. So everything when you draw it out is square.
This is a flux that was originally made in Fort Wayne, Indiana, called Easy Weld. It was made by the anti-borax company. That got sold to Superior Flux Company in Cleveland, Ohio, who makes it today. I learned to weld with borax. I've never seen anybody forge weld when I learned to weld. And then I went to a place in Middle Branch, Ohio, and visited with Thomas Horseshoer. And he was the first person I ever saw that used Easy Weld. And I asked him if I should get some, and he asked if I was getting welds. And I said yes, and he said, don't change a thing. So then I didn't use Easy Weld then either. But later on, Francis Whitaker convinced me to switch to it. I like it quite a bit. I had a great desire to blacksmith when I was young. My grandfather, his name was Charlie Zimmerman, had done some, and my uncle had done some, but not much. And so my granddad had a homemade forge that he didn't use anymore. He was pretty old when I was born. And I looked at it and I couldn't build that, so I just dug a hole in the ground and used that when I got home. I learned to forge from looking at old National Geographics and seeing pictures of African and Asian blacksmiths, and they use such simple equipment. I said, I can do that, and I made a lot of mistakes, but I did. And then when I got better equipment, it helped. But I made my own forges even at the restoration. I rebuilt the forge there and rebuilt the bellows. And I like wood leather bellows a lot. I have one I built that's in disrepair. I need to repair right now. But I like the fire better than any other fire. I use an old vacuum cleaner blower normally with a check valve on it so it won't blow up when the coal gas backs up. I've got two forges of those on. I have one with a commercial blower and a fire pot that I just hate. The commercial blower is very noisy, it was expensive, with my ex-business partners, and it doesn't work nearly as well as the old vacuum cleaner with a dimmer switch on it. I was very fortunate early in my blacksmithing, fairly early. About 1972 or so, I heard this old Italian blacksmith who had moved back from Italy to Hudson, Ohio. His name was Angelo Lavelli, and that he needed coal, so I took some coal to him. And he was blind. He was 90 years old at the time. He was blind from cataracts and almost totally deaf. He was still strong as a horse, and he couldn't work much because of his eyesight. He was not today. They didn't have good cataract surgery. He would not go to the hospital. He was afraid if he went to the hospital, he would never come out. So, but he looked at a door knocker I made at the time, and the first thing he did was say, "Brother, I haven't seen another real blacksmith in so many years." I forgot how many years. And then the next thing he did was criticize my door knocker. He said, "The door knocker should always be big enough so a man can get at least 3 fingers in the knocker in winter with gloves on." So there was a practicality to what he did. He was a superb blacksmith from Brescia, Italy, and his work was on a par with Samuel Yellen's Smith. Very good. So I never got to really watch him work, but he showed me a lot in his shop and explained a lot to me. And one of the things I treasured a lot. Today you have a lot of books and a lot of videos to learn from. When I learned, there was none of that. Very, very few books. And so you have advantages, but the most important thing you need, Angelo told me, he said when he made his first pair of blacksmith tongs, they didn't work. He went to the master smith with tears in his eyes, because he was like 14 years old. And he's Italian, you know, he's a big guy, very tall, very strong. But he was typical Italian, and he was very emotional. And he said he went with tears in his eyes, and the blacksmith sort of cuffed him and said, "What's the matter with you? There's nothing wrong with these tongs. All you have to do is heat them up and move them like this, and hit them here and here, and they'll be okay." And he said, the older blacksmith said, "With faith in God and yourself and hard work, there's nothing you can't do." It was a good lesson. So, you need to, when you make something, you need to have a vision of what you make. Visualize it as well as you can. Take maybe some clay. I didn't do that when I was younger. Take some clay and practice with it. Wrong way. Okay. Thank you. I wondered what you're doing. So visualization is really important. Using your mind to get a picture of what you want to make. And a good tool, anything you make should be made well. And you should think about it and plan it as carefully as a decorative piece, because the functionality of our work, we're artisans, not just artists for the most part. The functionality of our work is the most important thing. And blacksmiths were always important because we made tools. We made things that people had to have to live. We made axes, saws, chisels, sewing needles, scissors, rifle barrels, locks for doors. Anything people had to have for living was made by a blacksmith. Was a tool, some sort of blacksmith. And all of a sudden, the Industrial Revolution happened. Everybody's lives changed. When I work at home, I work alone. I don't take phone calls. I don't have a cell phone. I don't have a telephone in the shop. And so I get a lot of work done because I work straight through it. My wife has instructions, unless the person's a close friend or it's an important business thing, I do not take phone calls during the day. I answer in the evening. I consider a lot of modern things to be a big interruption to our life. And a blacksmith cannot get work done looking at a cell phone. Although the young guy next next door would probably disagree with that. He can't blacksmith. In order to learn blacksmithing and live the life I wanted, I lived half of my life at least without running water, without electricity a lot of the time, and I don't know, I'm as healthy as anybody else I know my age, so it didn't hurt me one bit. But we live by being interdependent, not by being independent. And we have to get along with other people. The blacksmith organizations are great because we teach each other, which is a wonderful way to learn. And to get them the same, I always just use my eyes. You could try to work through a drawing or template. To me, that's pretty difficult. I'll do a sketch and get it approximately right, and then I'll always finish by eye unless it's a real important thing like a lock part or something that has to be absolutely precise. When you make a lock, you normally make the key of the lock first, and then build the lock around the key. So the first lock I made, it took me a whole week of hard work to make the lock and the key, and I was really proud of it, so I put a week's wages on it, which at that time was $400, and I thought, well, I'll never sell this, and a month later I sold it to a guy up in Egg Harbor, Wisconsin, and the next thing I knew, he took it home and he lost the key for the lock. So then he sent the lock home. It was much harder to make the key to replace the one he lost than to make the original one and then make the lock. And then as soon as I sent it back, he found the other key. It's natural. Got my artificial hip put in. I went to the hospital. I got so I couldn't walk any longer. 22 years ago. And the nurse was putting the IV in the back of my hand, and she said, "You've got the toughest skin I've ever seen on the back of your hand." And I said, "It's all scar tissue." I said, "I get burned all the time." And she said, "You know, that's not good for you." I was very amused. I read an article in Popular Mechanics where these guys from Popular Mechanics decided they were going to learn blacksmithing. They made a very crude forge and hammered out something very poorly. And they said, "Well, we looked online and there are more blacksmiths today than there ever were." You know how many really good blacksmiths there are? Not very many. And so the old blacksmith was part of the community, knew how to repair and originally how to make every single item that was used in the community. And some items would be made by specialists in other areas. Scissors were quite often made by specialists. They're still made by blacksmiths. They're repaired by the local blacksmiths. Things like sewing needles were a real challenge to them. They had to punch that little hole in each sewing needle. Very few smiths knew how to do that. So France and Switzerland specialized in that. They still do today. They still make the best sewing needles, even though they do it in the